This episode of our This Week in XR podcast is sponsored by Zapper. Zapper is one of the world's leading XR companies. Over the past 12 years, they've won numerous awards for memorable campaigns. They've democratized AR by making tools and SDKs that anyone can use. And they created ZapBox, the world's most affordable mixed reality headset. Most recently, Zapper worked with Unilever to create an enhanced QR code called Accessible QR, which enables packaged goods to speak to the blind and partially sighted. If you're thinking XR, give the team at Zapper a call or visit zapper.com to see how they can help you on your XR journey. Good morning, everybody. I'm Charlie Fink with Ted Schilowitz and Roni Abovitz for This Week in
Hey,
XR. It's Friday, March 15th, 2024. Roni is driving from Austin back to his home in Florida. I gather you're in Alabama.
Sweet Home Alabama.
And Ted and I are back in our respective man caves, and I've gotten a little sleep since Wednesday, so I'm starting to feel a little less South by Southwest hangover. How about you, Ted?
I'm in my person cave, politically correct. And yes, starting to recover. It was a really good week in Austin. It was really fun and dynamic. And of course, we did a very interesting thing on our live podcast, which we will be able to run in a couple of weeks on the show. And we did I guess we'll tease it a little bit. We did a section of a podcast in a very large room in Austin at the convention center just called Dear Tim. And you can extrapolate what that might be about.
The title of the panel we did was XR in the Age of Vision Pro. It was broadly about XR with some specific, very specific parts about the Vision Pro, and Roni wore it for the entire panel just about. And we did have some fun and did some mild stunts that you will see in the video when it gets released in about 3 weeks.
It was a real crowd pleaser.
Yeah, I gathered the audio is on the South by Southwest site, but I think you have to be a member or sign in to be able to hear it. But I'm told there are tens of thousands of people who paid for remote access. They got to enjoy it, and hopefully you guys will too. Our guest is Laura Mingail. Laura is an advisor to South by Southwest. She's an old friend of ours. She was involved with VR at Entertainment One for about 3 years. She's a marketing expert. She has a consulting company, and she is a true South by Southwest denizen. So she'll help us recap the show a little bit. But and by the way, okay, top of the news, this amazing AI-driven experience that we saw at the XR exhibition at South by Southwest 1. It's called the Golden Key. And hopefully it looks like one of the co-directors, Matthew Niederhauser, is going to call in on the show and talk to us about
Matt's a good friend of mine. I've known him for years, and it's an impressive piece of work. It was fun to see it come to fruition and visualize a dream of AI that a lot of people have had coming to fruition.
I thought it was stunning. Let's get to the other news. There's not a whole lot of news, but there's a lot of money in the news.
Yeah, there's always a few AI nuggets, right? It's AI nuggets.
Salesforce leads around for a company NVIDIA has been backing called Together AI. It is to help companies train custom models running local versions of AI, of course, because nobody wants their company internet attached to any models that could go outside or could take their information and use it and so forth. So it seems like a good idea for a company right now. There's another company, Adaptive AI. They pulled down 20 million. Used to be a lot of money, but I guess in this world it's not. They're working on something called learning from human feedback. Reinforcement learning from human feedback, RLHF. That's when the AI gets better by interacting with humans and being corrected. Some company called Tavis Developer Platform raises 18 million for Gen AI Replica API. Yeah, that's a mouthful, but these guys look like they're doing a little bit like what 11 Labs does, where they're trying to have synthetic actors who also have lip sync and some voice accents and seem very real.
Yeah, it's a deep fake company. They're trying to commercialize and make viable the deep fake concept. Yeah.
Yeah, although they're looking at it for sales and customer
Yeah,
service.
it's like a corporate deep fake. Yeah.
So we went to a panel together for the Futureverse. And they just released something called Open. This is the company that Ernie Klein is a co-founder of, and they are trying to build an oasis that is not dystopian.
Yeah, and then you and I got to have dinner with Ernie Klein at South by
I
Southwest.
wasn't going to
Awesome.
brag. I know that's bragging. I wasn't going to do that, but he is a lovely man. He was super nice to me when I was writing my first book about XR in 2016. He's a true visionary. The guy's idea production is incredible. So it's great that he's got a team to work with, and he'll
Yeah,
be
we had a
able.
lot of fun. It was a nice
Yeah.
night. It was a good time.
It was a great night, and Futureverse, the company is a really interesting and ambitious company. They've raised a lot of money, so the metaverse, it seems, is not dead. We will see more of them, I am sure. I'm going to try and get Shara Senderoff, the
Oh,
CEO.
that would be great to have her on. Yeah, she's interesting. It'd be great to have her on the podcast.
I thought she
And I
was.
guess, Charlie, because the metaverse has never really been alive, you can't kill it, right?
Damn, that's a good one.
Yeah, maybe.
OpenAI is making deals with Le Monde and Prisa, a Spanish media conglomerate. So I guess these guys really don't want to fight, right? They'd rather pay than fight. It's only
And
the
they have
New York
plenty of
Times.
capital, right?
The
They
New
have
York
plenty of
Times
capital.
won't take the money.
Yeah, they have plenty of capital, so they might as well make nice with these groups that are going to provide them with information fields that they need to legitimize. So I think it's fine. New York Times is obviously the big one, the big belly of the beast that they've been working with, and
But
Well,
that's
the
an
New-
ugly fight if you're
Yeah,
looking at
the
the
New York
court
Times is
stuff.
suing
It's
them.
ugly.
yeah,
The New York Times is suing them, and OpenAI, of course, recently famously responded forcefully to the Times. I think, of course, they're fighting with the Times, so these publishers know that they'd rather make a deal, but they also have the fight with the Times gives them something of a negotiating position because they're like, look, we're paying you to cooperate. We really don't have to pay you, but we'd like to have a good relationship and less friction.
yeah. But they're doing these deals with other media and news related companies, right? So do you figure that the New York Times will eventually settle for some end result, or do you think they're not going to settle and they're going to try and continue to make the point? I don't have a dog in that fight. I'm just curious if you guys think it's going to go one way or the other.
Roni?
It's interesting because if you look at some of I saw yesterday the court records, what the Times was saying, they basically said the business model of OpenAI is copyright infringement.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like the transition from Napster to Spotify. And Napster was not the same company, right? Napster died, and then Spotify reemerged as a brand new company and had to reset and gain all of the IP legitimately through lots of deals with artists and labels, and it took a while. So yeah. I don't know if you could just grab everything Napster style and then just go around and try to bully people into a license. Maybe some people will fold, but it's quite ambiguous because what percentage of this unknown giant tarball belongs to whom? So at least with Spotify, you can like exactly what's in that database, and all those deals are specific. So this seems weird what's happening. They grabbed it Napster style. It's very much similar to that. And they're trying to cut deals to legitimize everything in it with a subset of people. So I don't know. The courts are going to have to weigh in here. This is going to get, and it's going to be courts around the world.
You remember what Gary Shapiro, the head of CES, said when he was on the show, because he was involved with the original DCA as well as the settlement that the MPAA made with the videotape of the producers of blank videotapes. So both the producers of blank videotapes and the producers of blank audio tapes paid a royalty on each one they sold, and that royalty was distributed by the MPAA and the RIAA for personal recording.
Yeah.
And that may be a solution here, right? That there is an amount of money that gets distributed based on size or something to compensate. It is an indirect use. It could be fair use. The New York Times has a chance they could lose.
Right.
The Trademark and Copyright Office has already agreed that prompting represents a significant prompting and curating is a significant artistic activity and can be protected. So if that is true, it follows that other things that AI creates are also not violating, but original.
Charlie, did you see the Joanna Stern interview of OpenAI's
Mira? Yeah, the woman Mira,
yeah,
right?
Mira, the CTO.
Yeah.
It was very interesting because there was this very specific use of words publicly available, not public domain.
Yeah.
Publicly available means that does not mean you own or have
Right. It does not
access
mean you
to
have the
use the
rights to it. It just
copyright.
means it's out there.
It
Yeah.
is a very weird use of the word, and these are incredibly intelligent people. So scraping the publicly available internet, which includes everyone's copyrights, does not mean you get to use that. So I feel like there's some kind of challenge. I would put it this way. I think there's an existential challenge on the meaning of copyrights and trademarks, and potentially even patents. This is not only like New York Times versus OpenAI. This is, does IP have any more meaning? Because if the courts rule in one direction or the other, like all IP loses value. Because if these guys can use any IP they want in any moment, why does anyone's IP matter? Why do you pay copyrights to anything? Why do patents matter? The entire superstructure of how this country and Western countries are built is just going to collapse. It's a bit apocalyptic sounding, but like the idea that anything publicly available is free to you to use without having to ask who owns it is a bit nuts. But the courts can rule and say, hey, we're in a new era. Copyrights, trademarks, patents don't mean anything. Or they can say, no, they do mean something. And that would be devastating to companies that have gathered up other people's IP without permission, because the cost to get that permission from everyone may collapse that company. This is a very interesting problem. We definitely should track it.
Oh, we are. There's something else we're tracking that I actually should have brought up at the top of the show, is that TikTok is under threat. The Congress has passed a law that if they do not have an American owner, they are going to pass a law that prevents the app stores from distributing the app. I don't know whether that'll kill it or whether that'll make it more famous, but it has a real chance of happening. And this
Why
is
did
a
it take
Chinese
so long?
company.
That's my only question.
This is a Chinese company. There have been a lot of people, Scott Galloway most notably, who have been yelling their heads off about this, although I am equally concerned because of the algorithm influencing us in ways of which we are not even aware. But this is also true about Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. All of these algorithms that determine what we see, what mix of friends and advertising and miscellaneous stuff gets shoved into our feed, is done by an algorithm, and we don't have any idea how that algorithm works. We don't have any idea how our personal data fits into that. So I think the ability for these platforms to influence us, and I'm talking about even sophisticated users like us, is deeply disturbing and should be regulated.
Charlie, think about the difference between the US government being able to sit down with people like Elon Musk or Mark, who are parts of this, the US citizens, and say, look, you're violating the law, or you're doing something that we think is completely incorrect, and they're part of the country, versus TikTok, which is like nation state.
Really, I'd like to know whether Google and Facebook are American companies, really.
That's an interesting question.
Right. Well, and Charlie,
what are they actually? Yeah.
You make an interesting point, because the thing that people seem to be forgetting in this discussion is the Great Chinese Firewall, and the fact that there are many companies, not just from the United States, but from all over the world, that have tried to enter and do business into China because of the economics of that and the amount of people, and they have been thwarted, returned to sender, asked to leave, because China wants to build their own version of Netflix, Google, Byte, et cetera, Spotify, et cetera. And they do a pretty good job of locking it down. And it's almost like the US is taking a page right out of that book. But it is a very interesting, nuanced argument, right? Because it's a sliding scale, right? Where does it end? And I think, although between certainly Roni's got strong opinions and our friend Scott Galloway and so forth and so on, all these people postulating that this company is doing things that are quite nefarious. So far, there is no proof to that beyond just people speculating on it, right? And ByteDance himself says, we're not doing any of that. Now, it doesn't mean that they won't be pressured by the Chinese government at one point into giving gigantic amounts of data fields away. And there's a secondary nuanced argument that you were mentioning about social dynamics and social engineering, which, by the way, is not just a ByteDance problem. It's a Facebook problem and an everything US-based company problem as well. So it's not a one-sided argument, as much as I think people try and make it that. It's a very nuanced argument.
I think these algorithms need to be more transparent. I'd like to know what is determining what is in my feed. I don't know I don't know why I can't find that out, because Twitter, Facebook, as I said, Instagram, all have influence. Probably it's all to sell me stuff,
Exactly.
but I'd like to know what that is. I'd like to know what parts of my personal data are mixed in with
You guys,
that.
you guys
As my
remember the
current,
document? Do you remember the social media documentary on Netflix?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
The Social Dilemma.
Yeah.
I'm just looking up the name.
Yeah, it's The Social Dilemma.
We should have that we should have that team on here because they were really shining a light on this topic
Yes,
and the lack of clarity on
Yes.
what's happening. And by the way, we talked a little bit about this at South by Southwest. AI is a giant black box, and what TikTok is a combination of both. It's basically social influence algorithms in a black box combined with quite a powerful AI. Like TikTok has an amazing AI that studies you and others and is basically feeding you more social media crack to keep you on the system. And then
yeah,
if you look at this like feedback loop it has with a really brilliant AI, it's like nudging you in certain directions.
yes.
And I think that nudging is the worry. That's exactly what you're talking about, Charlie. Like, where are they nudging you? We saw a whole bunch of Gen Z, I'm just going to bring this one up, suddenly become favorable to Osama bin Laden, who blew up and attacked people in the United States and killed thousands. And they were like rethinking it. And it just suddenly emerged on TikTok. And the tricky thing is, you can't pinpoint exactly where it started, but it just happened. And now you have this like millennial group that was like, maybe he wasn't a bad guy. And it was like, that's the kind of thing I think people are worried about. And
Sure.
what
Well,
caused that weird
the
dangerous
anti-Semitic
movement.
stuff that's been circulating in certain ethnic communities. I don't want to go into it on the show and get all emotional and weird about it, but social media can promote things that are disturbing, particularly if you're part of the group that is under attack. But let's not get into that. I see Laura is here, so we'll talk about happy things.
Good.
So
Back to happy.
we'll admit her. Laura is the best. And she turned me on to some great stuff. Every time I ran into her, she had a list of things I needed to go do, including, I don't think I've talked to you guys about the Honda mobility experience where you're in this sort of motorized wheelchair with a VR headset on. Laura!
Hi.
Hi, Laura.
Hey, how are you?
Roni is in a car driving home from Austin. So he's audio
Hi.
only.
Hi.
Are you back in Toronto?
I'm back in Toronto. I heard you speaking about the Honda experience just when I joined. I love that one.
Yeah, so we thought we would have you on just because you've been working with Blake on the XR exhibition at South by Southwest for 8 years now. God, we're getting old doing this. So you're really a South by Southwest insider. You have a holistic view of all the panels and the exhibition. Obviously, our bias is very strongly toward the XR stuff, although there was a convention center floor that had a lot of interesting media technology. So we should talk about that too. And also what your South by Southwest is, because you really try and hit everything.
I do. So where do you want to start? There was so much. I feel like I was there for 4 days. It felt like 2 weeks. I don't know about you guys, but it was absolutely incredible this year.
I was
Yeah.
exhausted.
It was a very good show this year. Very well attended, thought out, lots of positive vibes floating around all the hotel venues and the convention center. It was a good time. Lots of good
Definitely.
events.
We tried to get Matthew, one of the directors, Matthew and Marco, the directors of the Golden Key, which won the XR Best Jury Award yesterday. But I guess they're all traveling and taking their stuff apart and couldn't make it. But we should talk about the Gold Key, even though they aren't here. Obviously, you saw it.
Definitely saw it. I absolutely loved it. I feel like that's the future of cinema. That's the future of shared experiences for at home as well. And like you guys were speaking about in the podcast before South by Southwest started, it's exciting because you can go right into it. There's no issues with throughput. More people can view it. More people can interact with it live. And I thought it was absolutely brilliant and definitely deserving of the award that they won.
Laura, why don't you explain through
Yeah,
your
we have
perspective
not
what
yet
it was?
explained. Yeah. Explain
sure.
what it is and how it worked.
Okay, so the Golden Key, my perception of it. So you step into this room with, I don't know the exact dimension of the screens, but it was an absolutely massive screen. You did feel immersed in it.
It was a triptych, and the 3 screens, I'm going to say, were about 8 by 12, something like that, 10 by 14. So
Yeah,
they're
they're
very
bigger than that. They're probably three 18-foot screens. They're like three legit movie screens. Yeah.
So they had
Right.
chairs arrayed in front of them, as well as a terminal where people could, maybe it was an Android pad that allowed them to add their prompts to the prompts that were already running a version of Stable Diffusion that they had in a big box behind the screens, so they could generate images instantly, which is, for those of you who have tried image generation with DALL-E and other tools, there's some latency. But if you're running it locally, if you have a strong enough graphics card, like a recent NVIDIA laptop or gaming computer, you can run it locally. So that's what they were doing. So they were essentially producing silent films, silent color films on the fly using this AI program, and people could modify the shows by adding their own prompts. And I agree with you. I sat there watching it. I was mesmerized. I was filling in the narrative in my head, right? Because there was no sound.
There was audio. There was absolutely audio for this one.
What was the audio? I forgot about that.
Well,
So
they were telling you the stories.
Oh, you
Yes.
heard the fairy tale in the background?
No,
God, I
and
wasn't
then-
even.
yeah,
Yeah, they were like
It's that
fractured fairy
mesmerizing.
tales. So
they're telling you the stories. Yeah.
Yeah. So they had trained it on all sorts of fairy tales. And when you step in, you could watch the content come to life in real time. It was running from 11 a.m. or slightly before 11 a.m. all the way through to 6 p.m. each day. And the story continued. And the kiosks, Charlie, that you mentioned, there were 2 of them that you can step up into. And each of the kiosks had different AI generated questions. Some of them were super weird. I took
Oh
the
no, you're talking about Tulip Mancer.
This
No.
is, she's talking
This is
about
it.
Golden Key.
Okay, because okay.
Yeah. See, it's all blending together because there
No,
were so many
Tulip
different
Mancer
things.
was also theirs. And they
Yes.
had that at Venice. So it was alongside of the Golden Key. Tulip Mancer also asked you really bizarre personal questions, and that made me very uncomfortable and annoyed. And it had you working on like a 1970s or 80s terminal.
It was an old compact computer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that was
Yeah.
the experience that was alongside of the Golden Key.
definitely. And with the Golden Key, the questions were not personal, which was nice. They were faster as well. It was timed. So you had a certain amount of seconds to answer each of those questions. And within a few minutes, you would start to see how your responses would impact the narrative in real time on the big screen.
And the thing I would love to see at some point, if Matt could ever share it with us, is here's the power bill from the week that it cost, because it was running on, I think he told me it was 7 very high-end Dell computers, all with NVIDIA 4090s, which are the massive graphics cards that are basically a computer in and of themselves. And I think they had to actually do a special power drop. They couldn't just use the hotel wall power. And this thing is running, what, 8 hours a day for 7 days straight, nonstop. And I just bet
think
it
they
cost
had
a
an air. They
lot
had
of
a.
money.
They had a portable air conditioner
I
that.
bet it cost a lot of dough and power. Yeah.
No, it was it was something that the convention center had never done, which was
It's
drag.
amazing it worked at all.
Oh, it was actually, sorry, it was in the Fairmont. So they had
The
never.
Fairmont, yeah,
The
in the
Fairmont
Fairmont.
doesn't. They had to drag 220 there from somewhere, and apparently the price of it was pretty.
I'm sure it was extensive. Yeah.
I think it was like 5 figures.
Yeah. Wow.
It's nice they had Deloitte sponsoring that.
Yeah, they had a corporate
Yes.
sponsor.
Yeah.
Yes.
They had a sugar daddy.
Yes, exactly. But it was very expensive, but it was unbelievable. And I agree with you, Laura. I was watching it thinking, this is like a new medium.
I saw, I don't know, probably over the times I went in there, maybe 10 stories. And some of them were unintelligible and it was, whoa, what's going on? But there was one in particular, someone, wasn't me, someone prompted something about avocados. And it made this story. I wish I would filming it. It made this story about this avocado forest and this like sort of fantasy Grimm's fairy tale thing. And the imagery of fantastical avocado trees that don't exist in the real world was like crazy good. And like the people I was sitting with, this is really interesting. And we didn't want to leave. It was fascinating. It was just unbelievable how interesting it was. And then the next one, because it's all in real time, was completely idiotic and unintelligible and had cats in it. Apparently, AI likes cats. And whenever it gets a chance to make a cat, it'll make a cat. So it was unbelievably fascinating to me.
Isn't this like the infinite 8-bit Seinfeld, the never-ending
Yeah.
show that was like
Yes.
a year ago? I think we're starting to see the idea that like as Hollywood disintegrates, there'll be this like new media, like infinite custom. It becomes what you want to that micro audience. This sort of like super targeted. I just created.
Rhodey's getting some car transmission.
Yeah. Laura, what else was inspirational for you at the
Sorry.
show? What else did you dig?
Oh my goodness. So inspirational. I have to say Tulipamancer. I know we're not just going to stick on the creative from that team. There's only been a few experiences in my life. I actually teared up in headset, not because of the story, but because I truly believe that is the future of what's possible for storytelling. And I feel like you described it a little bit on your past show. I don't know if you want to describe it a little bit now, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, we can give a very short
Yeah.
description. It is a throughput challenge situation because they have one setup with an old Vive and a very old PC, and you prompt it. It takes about, I don't know, 18 minutes per person. It took me a long time. It wants as much personal information as you're comfortable with. You literally sit on this old sort of typewriter-y computer thing and you type it in on this little luminescent screen from the 80s. So it feels like you went back in time.
It's a green CRT monitor.
Yeah. And then after you put in all this personal information, it tells you to put on a VR headset that's sitting right next to it. It's an old like first gen Vive with the trackers and everything they set up in the room. And then it draws the things that you put into it in a weird sort of spectral kind of way. And I think the thing that was most interesting to me was seeing that seeing Golden Key first for a little while. Then Matt brought me in and did the Topolmancer thing, and then going back to the Golden Key. And it felt, so that was in Venice, what, 6 months ago, 8 months ago? And it felt like the graphic advancement in just 6 months was like 25 years in time in terms of AI time, because the stuff in the Golden Key was gorgeous fidelity. Like it was, and it was fascinating. Some was photoreal and some was this like beautiful art styles and all these really interesting things. And the Topolmancer stuff was not that. It was very pixelated and you could see the diffusion algorithms doing their things in real time. So it was both really interesting to see how it felt in your brain and in your body. And you're right, the Topolmancer thing was very emotional because if you put a lot of personal stuff in, it's going to draw you there. And then there's, I don't want to spoil it, but at the end, it takes you to a place where you're going to get emotional. In fact, Charlie, we should do a special report through the historical lens of VR on things that have made us cry in VR. Like, when did you cry at a headset? I probably got 6 or 7 distinct times where it was just so emotionally overwhelming that it was just, here come the waterworks. And
there was the only thing in VR that has ever made me respond that way was Where Thoughts Go.
Oh, Charlie, you're a tougher nut than me. I'm a crier. There are definitely things that have made me like full Pixar moments in VR. Laura, I'm sure the same with you, right? Where you just, oh my God, it's coming.
All right, wait, are you there? Can you hear us?
I can hear you guys. I feel like this is an episode of, I was going to say, it feels like an Oprah episode right now.
Yeah, exactly. So I was going to say, have you ever cried at a headset?
Have you ever cried at a headset? That's what we want to ask the question.
I came close once, and I'll just describe it. And it's sad. I always used to get into design reviews and everything our team was building, but the team that made Last Light kept me away because they just wanted it to be a big surprise, and I really wanted to see it. And finally, they were like, okay, we're at 90% done. We had been accepted to South by Southwest 2020, which got shut down, and cons and all these amazing things. And we had this really cool room. I don't know, Ted, if you were ever in there. It's like a soundproof room that had low light. You could sit down, and it was a spectacular 30-minute experience. But what was really great about it was the team that did it all had gone through this trauma. Like the director, I think he lost a grandparent, and everyone had some kind of trauma. Yeah. And they had all channeled their trauma in this amazing, creative, beautiful way into Last Light. And it was just like weeks before the country shut down. So what was like especially sad about it was like how beautiful and amazing it was. But then the excitement was they were going to show all this to the world and turn their grief into joy. But the karmic plan of the universe was like, no, we're going to shut that down too. But that was probably the closest I ever came.
Yeah,
maybe a little bit more.
I've got a lot.
I mean,
there was a piece at Tribeca years back. I think it was just called The Key, interestingly enough. And I'll get all like emotional just telling you the story. You know this, you know what I'm talking about, Laura? There was a
I
Yes,
saw,
I
I
do.
saw
VR
that.
Yeah,
experience
that one.
Yeah, I saw that. And
Yeah.
that I think it won that year.
about
did.
it was about refugees in the
Yeah.
Middle East
It
and
was
the
about
fact
it was about the war in
Afghanistan maybe or
Syria. It was about the
Syria.
Syrian
Yeah.
civil war.
And I have a lot of friends from the Middle East here, and it was interesting talking about this. There's so many people that once they lose their home, they keep their key to their home and they still have it on their keychain years later because the only thing that attaches them to the thing they lost. It's incredibly emotional. Like it just took me over the edge. I was a wreck for the rest of the day. And that's the amazing thing about an art form like virtual reality is when you can bring yourself to that. There was also this piece. It was made by I feel really bad. I can't remember the name of this piece because I used to show it to people a lot. Very early in VR, it was made by a Pixar storyteller artist. And do you remember this was a story about a young girl and his father in the car, and you're in the car driving?
Pearl.
Pearl. Yes.
Yes.
Everyone
Yeah.
who has a VR headset and can go back in time.
By the way,
should watch
no,
Pearl.
I believe both Pearl and the Key are available for the Quest.
It was one of it still I still remember how it took me to that place that only really good movies take you, and it took me there in about 3.5 minutes, and it was full on. I can't even see, I got to take it off kind of thing. It was great.
Yeah,
It was
for
an
me,
amazing piece of storytelling.
that was amazing. For me, I have to say,
Matthew has just entered the green room a half an hour late, but
That's right, we'll give him a
bring
few
him
minutes.
in. We'll do double guest.
We were shucking for time telling stories about why we cry in VR, Matt.
Although I was going to try and get to that Honda experience and a bunch of other things.
Go ahead while Matt's trying to dial in. Tell us
He's
about
going to
Honda.
materialize any second, and we're going to talk about the Golden Key more.
Someday on one of
But he's
these,
only going to get 10 minutes
yeah,
instead.
he's only gonna get a minute when
Half
he
an
starts
hour.
talking. When he starts talking. Someday when there's
Hey.
more time, I'll tell you about the other thing where I cried very much in public not public, but with other
No,
people in the room.
I had one other, Carne Irina.
Yeah. Yeah.
That one, if you don't cry after Carne
Yeah.
Irina,
Yeah, I cried.
you don't have
I
a
for
heart.
sure cried.
You don't have a heart.
Yeah, I cried.
Every person who is obsessed with immigration ought to go see the videos that accompanied that VR experience. It was astounding.
Panhandle.
Hey, Matt.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
That looks like somebody is still in Austin in a hotel.
I'm still in Austin in a hotel. You know it.
Is the experience still running or is it packed up now?
Now it's packed up as of yesterday. 600 pounds of gear is
Wow.
heading back to New York City. But yeah, it's been a wild week. But
Before you got
it's-
here, we talked about the experience with Laura, so our listeners know what it is. But maybe tell us your impression of the week, like from your perspective as a creator, and what, if anything, happened to you this week from your journey in this art form. Give us a little insight.
Yeah.
In your brain.
No, to tell you the truth, this was actually my first South by, which most people find surprising given how long I've been playing around with tech
I
and
do find that
immersive in
surprising.
general.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, it was the perfect place to bring a project like the Golden Key for the first time. We did our first generative AI piece with Tulpamancer at the Venice Film Festival. And then we were, based off of that experience there, really the foundation of the Golden Key started materializing as an idea. Like, how can we open it up to a larger audience, create a piece that allows you to have this sort of participatory storytelling interaction occur, and having such an engaged audience come and just like really throw themselves into it was amazing. And I would say quite different compared to what occurred with like at Venice, which was great still, but this was just amazing feedback. Got to see a ton of people try to break it. And quite frankly, a lot of really interesting people showed up who I think will lead to some real opportunities to show it to a larger public for longer durations as well.
Yeah.
Winning the jury award was also icing on top. And so
I told you on the first day when I saw it that you were going to win.
Yeah, we all predicted it. Matt, I'm
Well,
curious. I'm curious, did anybody have a negative reaction? Because this is showing AI in all of its power and all of its, let's use glory in big quotes. Did anybody come to you or any of the other developers or creators or the folks that Deloitte that was sponsoring it and had a what the hell are you guys doing? You're wrecking the world. Did anybody have that moment or no?
No, not that I'm aware of. Maybe I'll circle back up with the docents and stuff. In short, no. I think that there were definitely some people who didn't fully grasp what was going
Mm,
on at the same
yeah,
time.
sure.
Thought they were just walking into a movie or something like that. And also, even as I said, when we showed Tulpamancer at the Venice Film Festival last summer, which was right in the middle of the strike, we did have a reporter come up and give us some, try to give us some hard questions during interview. Essentially, like, so you've created an experience without a director, cinematographer, editor, or crew. And now just hold on a second
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
It's
That's why you're
not
rolling in
like
it there, buddy. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's not like I woke up and told ChatGPT to create this piece and then I went back to bed. This is a pretty
I did this kind of thing called creative work that actually made it what it is. Yeah.
yeah, it's actually a pretty complex process and stems from my own background in photography and video and storytelling. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, of course, it's also the ideas did
yeah,
not come were not made by a computer. The
Correct.
ideas instructed the computer what to create.
Well,
yeah,
I also
yeah.
think it's
And
important to note that really good art disrupts, right? It makes people think. It challenges your ways of knowing what the world is and what's possible. And you can go back historically, literally hundreds, if not thousands of years to see that art in all its forms has progressed society because it challenges ideas and makes people think twice. And this is
yeah,
a current version of that. And
yeah.
just the progress from Topomancer to Golden Key is shocking, terrifying, and inspiring all at once. Like it's amazing. It must be from your perspective as well.
Yeah, no, listen, believe me, there's definitely some people who reacted where it gave them pause.
Hmm.
And quite frankly, that is a super valid reaction and ones that we're actually hoping for as well. Especially Tulpamancer. It's not supposed to be like a slick rendition of the real world. It's not supposed to be, I don't think I always say this, I don't think I just created the Matrix or something like that. There's first and foremost, these pieces are there to make people think and to think about a technology and foreshadow a technology that is coming really fast and is going to be integrated not just into an art experience that we architected and made, but into almost every single one of your media channels, your mobile devices, how we access and consume all sorts of different media. It's coming. And I think still having within the experience, seeing where the AI sometimes breaks down or doesn't do it, is not perfectly seamless, is still part of the design of that. So no one came after us being like, "What the hell? You've created the Terminator" or something like that. But at the same time, it did leave people in a state of wondering where we're going, and that is, quite frankly, that's one of our bigger hopes as well. Not only to potentially have a really interesting interaction with how these large language models, machine learning, are going to try to get to know you, to interact with you, to tell stories with you, but also like how does it actually work and what impact is it going to have on me as a person, especially in terms of how I consume media. So all of those reactions are valid. I'm not just there to be like, oh, that was wonderful, and now I'm going to go on my way. But yeah, anyway.
And since it was your very first South by, did you get to do anything that's fun around South by, or were you just stuck in that room the whole time?
I was in that room the entire
That's what
time,
I figured.
and I did see some music at night. I did stay an extra day, and I went to the rodeo last night.
Oh, there you go. All
Uh,
right. So you got a little Texas in you. That's good.
I definitely ate some
Did you get some
barbecue.
barbecue? Did somebody bring you some barbecue, or did you go out and eat some
Yeah,
barbecue?
somebody did bring me some barbecue,
There
and
you
which is
go.
nice. My partner brought me some barbecue here and there. No, it is disappointing that I didn't really get down to the rest of the XR exhibition because I'll always say this, my favorite part of these festivals, and yeah, I got to see other creators, other people from the industry at night and stuff like that, but coming and seeing what people are building and making is always like an inspiring part of showing up to these things. So I did see if no, I shouldn't say if didn't see anything else. But we were just running it was just such a
That's what
big,
happens, Matt. That's just why I asked the question. It's the
yeah,
traditional situation.
it was such a big lift to get that piece there. And was just really engaged on watching it run, seeing people interact with it.
And just tell the listeners, because I gave them from what you told me, but I want to make sure I got it right. The tech that was running this thing was ridiculously awesome, right? And how you managed to get it all to work and stuff is a story in and of itself.
Yeah, no, and I would say that I have to call out, and I should have done earlier, my co-creator Mark DaCosta, and also really wouldn't have this together and also so quickly without our technical director, Aaron Santiago, who is this real wizard who, based off of this initial idea and this design, actually worked with us to essentially create all of this moving all of these prompts, assets across all these different systems. You start with these kiosks, which is actually based off of essentially like a web page and a web server where it's taking people's input, translating that across through all these web APIs into, and in this case, we use ChatGPT just because it does have good, I would say, rails for public interaction in terms of somebody doing not safe for work type content on it. And then distributing all of this information across a bank of 4090 GPUs in the back that's creating all of the imagery, all of the text to image, all of the text to voice live, and then sending it and then taking those assets and then passing it back to what is essentially like a presentation computer that on the end was a touch designer to get it onto the 3 large scale projections. Tulpamancer used a similar setup, but and ended up in Unity. But essentially, we had around like 10 beefy computers back there doing all of the live gen. And so we had to get a custom 200 amp electric drop in that room and set up this big network that was passing everything around. So it was a big lift. And then going down to FedEx and dropping all that off the next morning.
So
But
yeah.
So Roni had a drop off. He had another 9 o'clock phone car meeting or whatever, mobile meeting. We only have a few minutes left on the show here. And we were just covering South by Southwest more broadly with Laura when you crashed in. So I want to make sure that we give some shout outs and call out some of the more interesting things we saw at the show, both on the convention center floor and in other areas. I got to see Chuck D give a talk about the future of the music business, which is another topic that the conference hits very heavily, along with other topics like AI. So, Laura, let us have it.
Oh my gosh. You hit on, for me, South by Southwest, it's like a golden ticket to everything. And it's not just about the talks or the curated content. It is a lot about that, but it's about meeting the creators and everybody coming together. You could hear the talks for free on South by Southwest now, but in terms of highlights, just a few. Well, there's so many, but just a few to throw out on the XR side. Young Thing, I thought was just really well done in terms of storytelling within XR. It's all designed in Quill. It's like a new form of storybook. Impulse, I really liked. I think Charlie,
I
you liked
love
that one
that. That's not
as well.
finished yet, but it's one of the best uses of mixed reality I've ever seen.
Absolutely. There was a feature of it, if that's the right word, that made me feel like the room was getting bigger with mixed reality, which is different than knocking down walls and ceilings. And I really like that in the storytelling of that. And I liked even the experimentation of wristband. Matthew, I did see you got out at wristband, which was nice. That concert.
I did see that. I
alone.
did see that.
Yeah. It was incredible. Canadian Innovation Lounge, I have to speak to as a Canadian within the XR space. Canada, UK had great representation on the show floor, officially in competition, all the way through to the 3 floors just at the Fairmont alone of XR, with, of course, Space Explorers being showcased, Star Stuff, where you become a constellation. I know we don't have enough time to go through everything, but Charlie, I messaged you during the festival. I love to wander on my own. And Hugh Forrest called out that is the best thing to do. I've been doing that since 2017. There's so much to see outside, and you have to go with, truly, I know this is cheesy, what makes your heart race. You can't waste your time going with other people to places. You see them at the events after the show's floors close. And I went to the Honda experience. I didn't even know that would be there. I passed by somebody literally riding a robot without, like, just physically, just by shifting.
Yeah.
And can I get into it? Just
Yeah.
yeah. It was absolutely unbelievable. I saw the words XR there. I didn't see XR until I found out what was behind the wall. But you sit on this robot, and I know it sounds weird, but
It's a
you get
combination
trained.
of a wheelchair and a Segway.
Mhm.
Yeah, like that. And you move a little bit, like you basically move with your abs to the side. You sit up and the entire thing lifts you up, which I love, being short as well. So you go through a few minutes of learning how to navigate within that floor that they have for the demo. And I love to push things. I love to break things and push things to the limit. And I went as fast as I could. And the control to stop you so you didn't crash into people or a wall was absolutely incredible. But then you go through to the next space where the actual engineers from Japan were there, and
This
they
is
put
like the
on
Honda Idea Lab, right?
yeah. And they have a headset, I believe it was the MetaQuest Pro, that they put you in. You get the option of the tame experience, but I don't know anyone who picked that one.
Yeah.
And the more intense experience. Of course, I went for option 2. And you put on your headset. There's a guy that's literally, his role is to monitor you so you don't smash into a wall. And you chase this dog on a futuristic racetrack, and you jump through portals as you do that. So you feel the speed of the robot that you're on, and you're controlling it just with your shifts. It was unbelievably fun.
Yeah.
What I
Laura,
love, I have to say,
Laura,
really quickly,
they were emailing
Yeah.
me trying to get me over there, and I was thinking, nah, I don't know. And then Laura sent me an exuberant message, and I stopped by the next day, and she was not exaggerating. It was mad fun being on, moving around in the real world while you have the headset on. Reminded me a little bit of HoloRide, which our friend
Right.
Niels
That's what I was
Wanley
gonna say. Yeah.
is doing. He was on the show last year talking about this. Anyway, this really is all the time we have. Nobody wants to hear us go on for over an hour. Matthew, congratulations.
Thank you.
That piece was a real breakthrough, and I hope that we get to see more people get to see it. It really is extraordinary and does presage some amazing changes ahead of us in the coming years and decades. So South by Southwest always gives you something like that to think about. And it is great to see 3/4 of the XR community was there. The rest of them were doing something else filled with FOMO. But as I have said many times, South by Southwest is so big, you're going to have FOMO no matter what you choose to do. But it's great to come together with everybody and socialize. It's one thing I did realize this year is South by Southwest is all standing. All the socializing is standing. You want to see a panel, you have to get in line and stand. You want to do the XR experiences.
Right, that's why you need your own personal Honda robot. That you
Well,
want to
believe me, I
Exactly.
thought of that.
I asked
thought of
if I
that.
could take it out. They didn't let me.
And I did think when the chair lifts you up into the air, I thought, oh, I'll bet Laura liked this part. So
Yes.
it's funny that you mentioned that, because you were the one who sent me there, and I was like, oh, now I get why she really liked this. So, all right, everybody, have a great week. That's our show. We'll talk to you next Friday.